All right, hello everyone. I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to get data off of an API. So we'll just get to it. I have a post about collecting data on my website that'll probably be posted in the description below. But yeah, this is just a quick run through of how to collect data using an API Python and putting that data into a MySQL database. So first, we'll be collecting the data from an API that uses this platform, ZED Run, which is a horse NFT horse gambling platform, I guess. Full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with the platform. I don't use it. I don't do this gambling. This was for a friend of mine who wanted some code and some data taken from this website to see if we could do some manipulation, some analysis, things like that with the data. So yeah, if you want to read more about it, it's called ZedRun, and it uses Ethereum blockchain to do horse race gambling, I guess. Again, not too familiar with that, but this is a good, there's a rich data set associated with these races and these horses, which you can see here. There's other platforms that use this data, and what we're going to be doing is using the ZedRun API to pull data, put it in a SQL database, and then run queries, just being able to select that data, the specific data that we want from the database, which for here we're going to get data on a specific horse, this horse right here. And what this tutorial is going to do is going to start from zero. It's going to go from zero to data. So I have a virtual machine up here in Windows that has none of the required programs or applications or even the code. This is a fresh virtual machine. The only thing I did was install Google Chrome because I didn't want to use the Internet Explorer, Microsoft Internet Explorer. Okay, so we'll get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Git. Git is a source control manager for code, and what we're going to be doing is just downloading Git and Windows, and we're just going to get the Windows 64-bit setup. It's downloading here. Oh, I'm downloading it twice. I'll just grab that one. Okay, and just say yes and download it, and you can just keep all of the defaults. Okay, yeah, we'll just keep all the defaults. Just hit next and go through it. If you want to get more into it, there's documentation you can read about Git and source control. But the reason we're downloading Git is because we're going to download source code, which is at github.com/my-username. And we're going to go to repositories and ZedRunner. It's the most recent repository I have. I actually forked it from this other repository, from this other user, and made some edits. Occasionally, it's always a danger when you're using someone else's API that they might change the API. Using the code from this user, I actually wasn't able to make the calls to the API, so I made some changes just to be able to call and pull all that data down. So we'll just finish that. And we don't need to open the README. So we'll cancel that, and so we're going to check that we have it installed. So what we're going to do down here, we're going to go down to the Start menu on Windows. Oh yeah, this tutorial is for Windows. It seems like it's easier to do this, at least do the tutorial on Windows. A little bit later, I might show how to set up this system on Linux. For a web-based server, but right now this assumes Windows-based tutorial. Okay, so we'll go to the command prompt, which is just a terminal here, and we're going to just type git. Okay, and we see all of the git commands. If you see something that says git isn't recognized, you might need to reinstall, go through the Git or go through that installation process again. Um, Also, if you install it and you have this command prompt open, always just try to close it and restart it, because anything you do with this command prompt open, it needs to be restarted in order for those changes to take place in the command prompt. All right, so we've got Git installed. Next thing we're going to do is install Python. So for that, we're going to install Python, and we're going to install a very specific version of Python, 3.8.5, I believe. Yeah, that looks right. So yeah, search for Python 3.8.5. Yeah, Python is a programming language that our code base is written in, and we just need Python is their dependencies and packages, all of the things that go along with the code are very version specific, which is one of the criticisms of Python, but we just want to make sure that we download this very specific version. And so we'll just go down here and get the Windows web-based installer. And we'll open that and install it. So we'll install now. Also, click Add to Path right here. For some reason, by default, that's not. But adding it to path makes it so it's the Python command is usable in this. All right, now that Python's installed, we can launch it, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what we're doing with requesting APIs. So let me actually quit this, and what we're going to do first is install a Python package. Python packages are other snippets of code and dependencies that we can use along with Python. So what we're going to actually use is pip install. Pip is the Python package manager, so how we can install other modules or dependencies to run packages. And you can read more about pip in Python, but again, this is a little bit the package manager is beyond the scope of this tutorial. What we're going to do is just install pip environment to get all the dependencies needed to run this code. But first, I'm just going to go a little bit about requests. Requests are just like an internet. When you hit a web page, you're requesting that web page. For APIs, we can use commands in Python to request data from the API. So what we're going to do is pip install requests. Okay, and it looks like that installed. So actually, what we're going to do now is go into Python. So type the Python command, and let's see. So we're in Python now, and let's just import requests. So I'm running this code just in the terminal here. Usually this would be in a Python script that we'll see later, but you can just run individual commands. Oh, and I've got to import request. Requests with an S, not request. Okay, so now I have that module in this specific script that I'm going to write. And so what I'm going to write is response equals requests.get. Get is a specific web-based command. There's what's called verbs. There's post and get. Get means give me data from this endpoint. Endpoint is just a URL. And I'm going to take it over here and copy this placeholder API URL and put it here. So you see, it's just like a web page, HTTPS, and then it's just a web-based endpoint. To-dos one, okay, and we'll get that. And we didn't get an error code, so that's good. And what we're going to do now is just print the response. Oh, did I spell it wrong? I did. Okay, and now we get response 200. 200 means good, means it was successful, it worked. You might have seen other things where if you try to go to a web page and it's not found, it gives you a 404 error. That would be in the response here. So actually we can test that out where if I just don't put anything here, will it even work? Well, it just throws an error. Okay, here, let's try get let's try to get uh, let's try a really big number here. Okay, and now let's print the response. 404, not found, because I'm guessing the to-dos don't go up to that high number. So yeah, we get the not found. Clear. Okay. Just trying different commands here. So we'll go back to the other one where we request that to-do 1, which is a single to-do. And now what we're going to do is print response .text. Okay, and we see there's a JSON response. JSON is a JavaScript object notation, which is just the way certain APIs give data back. And we'll see that later. Again, this is just a quick overview of APIs, Python requests, and responses, web-based API responses. And so we can actually see, I bet if we do to-dos and just get all the to-dos, and then if I print response.text, yep, there's a whole bunch of it. So it goes to 200. There's 200 to-dos in this sample API here. And if you actually want to see, you can look up this API. What did I type? I just typed test API JSON. And it's this JSON placeholder API. So you can read more about it and just test. I think their sample code is in JavaScript, but we're using the request. Oh, sorry about my atrocious typing. Requests Python. And yep, you can read about the documentation for Python requests here if you want. But there's different ways to structure the requests where you can put authentication in there. You can use post or get. That's again beyond the scope of this tutorial, but I just wanted to show you a little bit about the APIs. Okay, so we went through that. Next, we're going to actually pull this code down. So let's just launch a fresh terminal here. And what we're going to do is actually use a git command. Remember that what we installed git? We're going to use a git command called git clone. And what we do with git clone is actually put the location of this repository that's here. And that's written in the README as well, and it's in the associated tutorial on my and my blog. Mic cut out here, so there's going to be a quick dubbing. So yes, the Git endpoint is in the description below in the blog post. So you type that Git command and it pulls down that repository, so now you have it locally. You can see here it's called ZedRunner in whatever directory you called that Git clone command in. Now next we'll be opening Visual Studio. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, you can install it. It's super easy to work with. And what we're doing is we're opening that repository, which is just the downloaded folder from the git clone command. And now we have all of the code here in one place to view. What's nice about Visual Studio Code is you can also open a new terminal. So that's a terminal just like we were using before with the Windows command. I believe by default Visual Studio Code uses a PowerShell terminal instead of the Windows command prompt, but it's all very similar. So now we have all of the code here and we're in the terminal. So what we're going to do now is run the pip command to install the local environment, the pip environment dependency. So like before, how we install requests, we're going to use the pip Python package manager to install pip environment. And what that will do is we'll use that command to install all of the dependencies to run this code in our environment. So let the pip command run and install everything it needs to with that pip install pip environment, pipenv. And then once that's finished, we'll be able to launch the Python code here in its own environment. All right, so that installation finished. And next, what we'll be doing is clearing the terminal, of course. I like a clean terminal. And we're looking at the README. So the way to install the ZedRunner environment here is that pip environment install deploy. And so we're just going to run that command in the terminal here. And what that will do is add everything for our code to let our code run and collect all that data from ZedRunner. It installs all the dependencies for us. Otherwise, we would have to run a whole bunch of pip commands and install individual dependencies. This way, it's a lot easier for someone to just grab the code and run it. Okay, so now, let's clear this. So now we actually did have the virtual environment installed, and we don't need to run the commands in the virtual environment because we can just run this pip environment command, run Python, and if we run that, we can see it will actually call the endpoint, the API endpoint for ZedRun, and it actually gives us an error. That's because in the code here, we're trying to put all that data in a SQL database that we haven't set up yet. So it's trying to communicate with the SQL database, but it's not. But we are able to get it to run. So it's able to call that endpoint, but then it gets an error. So next we'll set up the MySQL database. So what we're going to do is actually, I'm just going to use Chrome and search MySQL download. And actually I'm going to search MySQL community, which is the free one. And I believe it's on version 8.0.25. So let's download that. Yep. And so we can just download, download page. There we go. MSI installer. And yep, we'll download that. And you can just, no thanks, start my download. And open it. Wait for it to install. The installation takes quite a while, and you will have to give it permissions for everything because you're running a virtual server here on your Windows machine. So yep, developer, and you can just hit next on all of these. Execute, it might take a little bit, but it should work. Am I still recording audio? I am. For some reason my mic cuts out from time to time, so I do apologize. There's probably going to be some parts of this video where it's a voiceover because my mic just cuts out. So yeah, if it goes back and forth to being dubbed to being not dubbed, just know that's the reason. So yep, we're downloading everything and installing. Okay, that worked. We'll hit next. Execute this to install. Oh, that downloaded the products. Now it's installing, so this will take quite a while. We'll just let it work, and we'll come back when it's finished. I might just speed up the video here. It shouldn't take too long, but what it is installing is the SQL Server and all of the Windows SQL-based dependencies. All right, so that SQL installation was complete. We're going to click Next. We're going to click Next on this. We want to keep this defaults all the same. We want to keep the port numbers and everything. Yes, you can keep that. Root password, you can put anything you want in here, but remember it in case you do have to make changes. And so what we do want to do is add a user down here. And what we want to do is actually look at the README, and we want to use the user and password that's specified in the README. So username, ZedRunner, and password is this. So we're just going to cut and paste that and put it in for the password. And make sure you do that. I forgot to do that with one of these, and yeah, I had to then create a user later, which is a little bit of a hassle. So in the installation process, make sure you add that that user. And yeah, we want the role dbadmin. You could, just for the sake of this tutorial, that just gives them the permissions they need. Okay, and you can keep it all the same for here. This checkbox starts the MySQL server every time you start Windows. That's something you could turn off if you wanted to, and then you would turn it on manually. You would just need to, actually, yeah, I'll uncheck this so that it doesn't start every time, and I can show you how to start it. Okay, and next it configures the MySQL. Let me see, voice is still recording, so we're good. Uh, let's see, it's finishing the installation. Okay, and now it's set up. So, okay, and next we can just finish. We don't need any of this. Next, and I'm just going to check the connection here to make sure I know the password and it'll connect. Yep, okay, and we'll execute. Okay, so now, yep, it's running everything to set up our SQL server. All right, the configuration was successful. So we'll finish, and let's see. Yep, and so we'll start everything after the startup. Um, oh, the shell we don't really need. So actually I'll exit out of the shell. But I would like the workbench. There it is. All right. So we see there's a local instance of a SQL database that will connect with my password. And let's see. Yep, so now we can see we have a database here. Actually, we don't. We have a SQL server. We don't have a database yet. So what we do, we want to create a new schema. That's this button up here. And we want to call this schema ZED. This is what creates the database, because we have the server but no database yet. So again, here, I'm gonna, don't save. So it's this button here, create new schema, right here. Oh, you can't see the click. It looks like a little database with a plus button right here. And so we're going to call it ZED and keep everything default. And yeah, we're just going to create the schema right now. We'll add all the tables a little bit later. So we'll apply that. Okay, and let's see, if we click down here and go to schemas, we can see now we have a ZED schema. Oh, I guess we do have some databases here, like just some sample databases that you can play around with. But again, we're going to use the ZED database. We're going to put data into this ZED database. All right, so we have that, but we don't have the tables we need. There's no tables in here right now. So what we're going to do is actually create a new SQL query. And what we're going to do is go back here, and it is in the migrations zeddb.sql. So these are the commands to create all of the tables we need. I think that's correct. I've been playing with the repository a little bit, trying to get the right data in these databases. So yeah, that should all be, and once we're ready to run it, we hit this lightning bolt, and we see, oh, no database selected. Okay, so let's see, at the top here, I'm just going to write use ZED, which is the right database we want to use. And yep, we get the green check marks, which means it worked. We're going to hit the refresh button, and we can see there's now tables. There's nothing in the tables yet, but we can see there's column data, there's horse, column data on the horses, race table, race results, and stables. So now we have a running MySQL database in our local Windows environment. So next, let's clear this, and let's try to run that query, or that script to get the data from the ZedRun API. So it's in the README. Oh, there it is. and it's this one. And I do believe you have to run these commands in order because first you need the horses, then race data, then stable data. Or I think at least these two depend on having horse data first. So just make sure you run the command. This is the command to populate the horse table. So if we run it, yeah, it's working. So actually I'm going to stop this run with Control C, clear it because it was populating, and we're just going to check the database. So if I select rows, we can see that there is data there. So again, I right-clicked on the table and just select rows, which auto-populates a query here to select star, which is select everything from Z.horses. And we can see down here, there's all of this data. You can read through the columns, and if you're familiar with Z, you probably know what these columns mean a little bit more than me. But yeah, so this is individual horse data. Now I did stop the command. We can see it only populated 90 rows returned. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here, and so that we see the data coming through, I uncommented some debug comments to just view the data coming in. So I'm going to run that again, and it should be able to clear out the data and rerun. Oh, because there's data there, I need to use the flag force true. Because if there's data there, it won't rerun the command. But it does rerun the command now, and I wanted to look at the JSON data coming through, and I guess this didn't do it. So here, let's stop the run again. And where was that command? Oh, here it is. And fetch horse data. All right, and now we'll see the data streaming through, hopefully. Yes. So we can see each of these requests returns this JSON data, which is then parsed and put into the SQL database. So now if we check the database as it's running, and we select this, there we go. We can see there's 450 rows now. And if we run it again, 600 rows returned. So yep, it's just pulling in data. Every time it makes a call to the API, it's making this call to get data. And this is just a URL to the API, which every request returns data. There's some special things that the Python does that puts information in here for the horse data. Okay, so we'll let that run. And after that, I'm going to run the race command and then the stable command, and we'll come back and I'll show you how to query for specific horses once we have all of that data. All right, so the horse data finished downloading. So next we're going to install the race, or run the race command to pull all the race data down. Oops. Okay, and we shouldn't have to force it because there's no data there right now. So you should see the data starting to stream through. Great, and while that's running, I will show you that code. So it's in the zed.py file, and so it's actually using a query from GraphQL, which is this query here, and it's actually pulling the first 500, which I think means the last 500 races, but not too sure about what the API is doing. I haven't found good documentation on the ZedRun API. So if anybody does find it, comment or post to me somehow, either in the comments. You can find my email address. Yeah, if you know any more about this API, let me know, because I did find a hard time finding the documentation on it, and really most of what I did was through trial and error. So yeah, any help is appreciated. or you can fork the repo and build it yourself and build this out. Because like I said, I'm not a I'm not a big ZedRun enthusiast. I just like data. I like data and I like technology, and this is a way to use both. So yeah, let's just see. I think. So yeah, I think this is still running. Yep, still collecting data. So we'll let that run, and collect all that horse data, and we'll come back and run the stable data. Okay, and you can see the horse race results are still running. It'll run for quite a while. I think overall to fetch all the data when I ran it before took about a half an hour to an hour. But we have results here in the horse race, which we can query by again right-clicking, select the first 1,000 rows, and now we can see that there's data here. So you can take a look at the data as it's coming through. And what we're going to do now, because we have that data, we can run a specific query on the data. Because we have the horse data, we have race result data. We didn't even run the stable query yet. That's something you can run later and see what's coming in. But to actually get the data on the specific horse, we don't even need to run that. So what we're going to go is back to Visual Studio Codes, and in the migrations folder with all of the SQL commands, there's a SQL command to query horse races. And if you just grab this SQL query here, which is just all of this code, copy it, and if we go back to the query and we have a new query here, paste that SQL command, you can see it's actually grabbing a whole bunch of columns from different SQL databases, and we're looking at this specific horse number. So if you want to look up your specific horse, this is what you would change to your horse number. So if we run the SQL query now, we can see there are 10 results, and it's, let's see, some races. Oh, I thought I changed that to give me the data of the races. Hold on one second while I look. Query horse races. Oh, I didn't actually save that. But that's okay. So what we can do is we can just add that to this query. And by the time you download the repository, it will most likely be there. But what I'm just going to do is change this to races dot start time, which is just another column. We can just add another column here to the query. And when we run it, there we go. Now we have the start time. So it looks like these were all run today. So as we're pulling the race data, it pulls the most recent to the oldest. And we're getting the finish time. You can look through the data too if you want something else in this query. You can look through the horse columns, and let's see, because we're looking at a specific horse, we probably don't care about anything in the horse columns, but what about the race columns or the race results columns? For example, say we wanted to look at the weather, because I know that's something that might be coming up later. I think now, is what my friend tells me, all the weather is exactly the same, but eventually that might change. So let's just add weather to this query and run it. So yep, now we have another column with weather. So that's a little bit just about SQL, how the querying works, and now we can pull out specific data for this specific horse, which is this here. And in the blog post, I've put a link to resources about SQL, so you can start reading about SQL querying. I'm not a SQL expert. I know enough to get by, and really for doing things like this, that's all you need. There's a lot of resources out there, so if you just know how to search for the documentation and how to make queries, you'll be able to get by to do a lot of different things with this data. Yeah, so let me run it again to see if there's any new data. Still only 10. So let's see. Yeah, it's still running. It'll take quite a while to finish depending on how many queries you're making and how much data you're pulling down. So yeah, that's it for this quick tutorial on how to go from 0 to Z data. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. So yeah, what this is doing is setting up a local SQL database with all of your ZedRunner data, pulling from a Python script to query the API and put in this local MySQL database. What are the next steps? Like, this is nice, but you still only have a local SQL database that's running on your local machine that if you want to update, you have to update this command. I've put in the blog post a little bit about how to automatically pull this data. You can either do on Linux if you run a cron job, or on Windows if you set up a scheduled task, you can automate this. But still, that's still just on your local machine. So if you wanted to do something worthwhile on this, what you would do is probably set up a server, a SQL server, either in the cloud or on web hosting somewhere, where it runs and runs these commands every night or something. So it's pulling nightly data, and then you're updating some sort of front end, either with HTML, JavaScript, or with Python, like a Flask app. And later, because I do like messing with this data, I might put a tutorial on how to then take the next step, how to build this SQL database and this code into a fully functioning platform system where we make a front end that's populated with this data. That is a little bit more of an involved project because that does deal with security, web hosting, probably some cloud basics because we'll need to host it somewhere, which would be on, AWS or Azure. And yeah, because we're dealing with a SQL database, we want to make sure it's secure. And yeah, no one can mess with the data. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comment below.